All right, guys, so we finally made it to part 3 of the Foglight FJ install. Sorry to leave you guys hanging for so long. Been busy doing things, but we're going to get this done here today, so I'm going to explain the last piece that we need to do. So, we got this switch here, which I'll show you later on in the truck. This is going to fit right into one of the blanks on the truck, but we got 4 wires coming off of here, a yellow, a blue, a red, and a black. And so I want to talk about those wires a little bit, kind of explain what's what. So this yellow one right here is a 12-volt power source. This blue one over here, this is called the trigger. This red one down here is a 12-volt power source. And as we learned in class, black is going to be the ground, which it usually is, except for like the exception when we were talking about those fog lights before, and the black was actually the hot. So let me explain the trigger. So the trigger is actually the wire that we need to run through the firewall of the truck. We need to hook that wire up into this. So the one that's curled up in the engine bay, we need to run that through the wall, like somewhere near the steering column or something like that, and hook that to here. So you might be wondering why there's 2 12-volt power sources, and that is a good thing to wonder. The reason there's 2 is we got to get power from somewhere to power the lights. So the yellow one is actually going to be the one that's going to power the lights. So basically the switch is just kind of breaking the circuit between the yellow and the blue. So when I push that, it connects the yellow and the blue, and the lights light up along with our ground. So what does this red 12 volt do? Well, you've probably seen this in some vehicles before, but you can see there's a little light right there. So this switch has its own little like LED embedded in it, and that needs to get power from somewhere as well. And that's what the extra 12 volt power source is for. So that's why we have 2 powers, and it's generally a good idea if you run into something like this that you pull them from 2 different sources, because we've learned about parallel and series circuits before. So if we split this, you know, you've got like 6 volts going into each one, not really 12. So what I need to do now is go out to the FJ and see if I can find, hopefully in the fuse panel, some usable power sources for these, and I'll show you guys how to do that. All right, guys, so here I am out in the FJ again here with my switch, and you can see like some auto manufacturers will give you these like blanks right here. Some manufacturers like don't want you messing with your car at all, but then other vehicles like off-road ones and stuff like that, like they'll just be like, yeah, people are gonna modify these things, so we'll just give them some blanks. So I'm gonna hopefully install it in one of these things here, and what I need to do though is figure out how to get power to those 12 volt sources. So right down here, I've got a fuse panel that you can see in there, and there's a whole bunch of empty slots in there. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this thing here called a test probe. Now this thing looks like an ice pick or something you'd see in like a horror movie to like stab someone to death. But on the end here, you'll see that there's a clamp. So if you've never seen one of these things before, the way this works is right under here, I got some bare metal. So I'm going to take that and just clamp that onto the bare metal there. And then I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to start looking, and there's a light bulb inside of here. And you just take the metal end and just touch some of these. And if we get something to light up, we know that oh, there we go. So that one right there, there's 12 volts coming out of there. Now I don't have the key on. There's another one. So that's something to think about too. If you don't want your, lights or whatever it is you're trying to power on all the time, you might want to try to find one that like only comes on when the key comes on. So looks like I got 2 right here, actually 3 in a row. So I'm going to take a Sharpie here that I brought out with me, and I'm just going to put a little mark on them so that I know I got power here, here, and here that I can probably use. And I'm going to go do a little bit of soldering, solder some wires onto the end of this switch here, and then see if I can figure out a way to tap into them and make this whole thing happen. So I know I said that I was headed in to do a little bit of soldering, but I figured I'd do a little bit of investigating before I did that. And I just popped this panel off here, and I installed this oil pressure gauge a while back. And I must have been thinking ahead. I didn't even remember doing this, but you can see here on this black ground wire, I actually have an open like spade connector right here that I must have left so that I could ground like something else to it. So I think we're just going to need to put a short like black wire on that switch and then just connect it into here. And I also popped out the blank with my finger already, so we're good to go on that. All right guys, so what I've done here is I've got a couple of spade connectors from just my supply of stuff. And you can see these connectors have like a plastic like end on them, and because I need to stick them into that fuse panel, that's not going to work. So I need to get that off. So I've just been taking a pair of pliers here and kind of getting that inside there and just pulling them out, you know, something like that. And so we're pretty much ready here to do some soldering. I cut some wires to lengthen these, a red, a yellow, a black. So we're just going to make these all a little bit longer. I already put some shrink tube on here just to kind of speed up the process. So let's do this here. Let's take this yellow one, get this on here. Got my solder here, everybody's favorite part. Let's go ahead and solder this on here. Lovely solder smoke right up in my face there. So there's the yellow. We made that one a little bit longer. Remember, I got to reach that fuse panel down at the bottom, so that's why I'm extending these a little bit. It's not super far away, so I only cut like maybe 6 inches. So I'm just adding a little bit of wire, depending on, you know, if you're doing something like this on your own, depending on where your power source is that you're trying to get power from, you might have to add like a different length amount of wire. So there's that. And because I found that little ground that I had left for myself, that other install, which is like practically right next to where this switch is going, I cut this black wire a little bit shorter. It's not as long as it's not going as far as a distance, which I'm sure makes sense. So let's get that on here. All right, so all of these are soldered up. Notice I didn't lengthen the trigger wire, the blue one that's going to come through the firewall, because I know from that curling up in the engine there was like tons of length on there, so it should be able to reach this pretty easy. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this heat shrink tube up here. I'm going to get my heat gun, which I forgot to get out, so I'll turn the video off, but I'm going to shrink those tubes on there, and then I'm going to crimp these on the end, and we'll head back out to the FJ. Alright guys, so I've done a couple things in the last few minutes here. You can see I put some heat shrink on them, and then I connected all the spades to the end of this here. Now something I want to point out, you can see these spades on the blue and the black. I just kind of left them as they were, but the red and the yellow ones, I actually took this pair of nippers here and I cut them in half because those fuses are like really small. And so I need to be able to like slide them in there. So I didn't actually go out and test them in the FJ yet, so I'm not sure if they're going to fit, but I'm anticipating that they probably will. We'll find out. Okay, so here we are. We're back out under the hood of the FJ here, and you can see I uncoiled this yellow wire, and I was doing a little looking, and I found something right here. There's a rubber boot right here that goes through the firewall there. So I'm going to try to fish that yellow wire right through that hole in there. We'll see what happens. Alright guys, so fishing that wire through the firewall and in through this cavity hole here in the dash was way easier than I thought it was going to be. You can see I got a lot yellow here. I got my switch ready to go, which we need to connect to the blue wire. I believe we said was the trigger. A little confusing because we got two yellows here, but yeah, so should be pretty easy from this point. I'm just going to cut this wire to the right length and put a spade connector on here, and then I'll show you guys throwing this switch in and hooking everything up. We'll see what happens. All right, guys, so I cut this yellow wire to length and added a spade connector here. And what we're going to do now is take our switch that we have all wired up. We're going to feed it through the hole, and then we're going to connect everything. So I'm just going to take these wires, bend them in half to make it a little easier to feed in there. There's a lot of them. Okay. And that'll snap right in place as if it came from the factory. I'm going to reach in the back here, grab this collection of wires, and we are going to take the blue one, which is our trigger wire from the switch, and we're going to connect that to the yellow one, which is the trigger wire in the engine bay. A little confusing since we have two yellows. We got the black one that we're going to connect up here to this ground that I had from before. And then we're going to take these two red and yellow ones, and we're going to feed those down to those hots that we found on the fuse panel earlier. So remember, I kind of took these and cut them like in half like that. So we're going to take this, and that should go right in there, and this one's going to go right in here. That one went in better than the red one. We'll have to try that red one again. Maybe we'll move it over here. Okay, so now I'm just going to neaten some things up and put everything back together here, and then we're going to try these lights for the first time. We'll see what happens. All right, everyone, so we're back for the final clip of this video here. So you can see I buttoned everything up, put it all back together, got this panel back on here. Here's our switch that we installed, and I put my fuse panel back on. Actually, we'll just pop this off real quick and show you. There's those two wired off the hots there. And you probably don't believe this because this is a video, but this is live happening in person here. Like, I have not checked this yet, so we're about to find out the moment of truth whether or not this works here. So let's see what happens. So I'm gonna push the switch, and actually there you can see if I cover that, that is on. So the switch is getting power. So as long as the lights are wired right, they should be on. So let's go check it out. Oh boy. Hey, they're on. I don't know if you guys can really see that through the camera there. I might have to come out here at night and video these again for you, but they are on. So there you go. Part 3. That is how you wire off-road lights on an FJ Cruiser, and you know the process would be the same on a lot of other vehicles. One side note I will make that you got to think about a little bit with this is I wired these lights to a constant hot. So what I mean by that is, like, I don't have to have my key. My key is on the on position right now, which you can see. But if I turn the key off and we come back out here, when we ran that test light on those, they were on all the time. So these are still on. So it's going to be real important to, you know, not bump that button. Otherwise, those lights will be on. If I park, you know, come out and my battery will be dead. So I just got to remember that they are hot 24/7. All right, Mr. G, over and out.